What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
What you're telling me is there's a value shift that has to take place. That as a leader, my value is not what I do and say. My leader's a value. My value as a leader is what can I do to empower people to contribute to whatever the solution, whatever the outcome is going to be. That's where my value comes into play, because of the fact that's where exponential impact happens, as opposed to, and it's also where engagement takes place, right? You know, it has to do with
how well am I helping my team move the ball?
Yeah.
I mean, I love, I'm the mom of 4 boys, husband and 4 boys. So ESPN was on in a loop in some of the early days.
Little testosterone in that house.
Yes, lots of testosterone. And one of the things that I had the opportunity to be exposed to a lot is basketball, and especially now at the wonderful University of Houston, where they have a basketball program that is certainly worth following. And my husband, who's very proud U of H alum, we were just talking this morning about the games that we were going to be attending. But it's interesting when you watch the game of basketball and when you look at the teams that do well versus the ones that don't. Teams that move the ball around, right? That share the ball, that share the responsibility, that look for opportunities, and that back each other up and set picks and all these other great things that basketball teams do versus a basketball team with a great player makes all the difference in the world. And leaders today have to be able to lead a great team, not just a great player.
God, you're making me go back to high school. We've been playing basketball. We had our play was called the shuffle, and it was pretty common at that era. But it literally was a rotation that took place where the ball was moving around. And if a person didn't know where they were going because the ball was going to be there, it broke down. And what happened is whenever we were in motion and the ball was moving or whatever, we were a force. And anytime it broke down, it just, we paid a price for that. And I love that analogy that if a leader's thinking about how do I get motion taking place, how do I create inertia and make something happen with
One
this.
of my favorite words.
Yeah, I love it. So let me ask you this: what breaks down inertia or momentum? What impacts it or impedes it?
I want a team very often pride. When people are so married to their own idea, they kill collaboration, because why ask you your thought? Why ask for your input if my answer, my contribution, my solution is the answer, the solution? So I'm not going to, invite people to contribute to that, or I may placate and immediately eliminate any of their ideas. So, and that's rooted in pride. It's rooted in pride, and it's also rooted in insecurity. When we talk about what led to promotions historically, where it may be, because that person knows the answer. And so when organizations create this hyper competitive environment where your rightness is what's overvalued, then that creates a value system, of this is part of my identity and don't take it away from me, and I won't let anyone else. So it becomes so deeply rooted. It also becomes ingrained. As mentioned, I work with a lot of technologists and those in the STEM field, and a lot of STEM curricula are based on how right you are. And so if you think about students, I mean, like myself, I came into STEM because when I was 10, a lot of things happened when I was 10, apparently. But when I was 10 and I lived in Seattle, I had a teacher that, acknowledged, my intelligence, my intellect. Probably for the first time, it had been highlighted, partly because I'd moved so much, and a very important part of my story, and how change became a really big part of my own narrative. But at this almost stable point of my life, I was with a teacher long enough for her to recognize my intellect, had me tested, put me in the, in the smart kid program. And from then on, and probably a little bit before that, but certainly from then on, smart was my adjective, smart was my value, smart was my identity. And so what that creates is a very fixed mindset. You have to be right. And if you're not right, oh, so a lot of teachers who teach children in STEM or teach children who are gifted and talented or GT in Texas, they can watch them literally melt down for being wrong because they themselves have so internalized being right. And
Right.
come with me and realize that that same kid that fell out for being wrong in algebra in the ninth grade got promoted and promoted and promoted.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they're an adult that will fall apart if corrected or if challenged, or we'll see collaboration as a threat, as a challenge. And so it creates these cultural challenges that have to be changed.
Yeah. Well, so what happened with you? What was there a point in time? Was an event or something you learned or experienced that shifted you to broaden your definition of success from accuracy, being right, the intellect that you have? Because you truly are one of the more, it's not just I've found you to be brilliant. I just thought I'd tell you that, but you're one of the most heart-driven people that I've met. So you've got this awesome coolness of mental capacity, but driven by this amazing heart. It sounds like that's something that developed over time.
It was always there. It was funny because even when I look back, as I was writing What's Your Catalyst? The Power of Managed Change, and even my memoir before that, Love as a Catalyst, I was looking at, my own story and my own narrative, and trying to find patterns. And even when I was in college, my service on my Society of Petroleum Engineers Association was to be the outreach coordinator, to be the social coordinator. I always had a passion for people, and I didn't know how to reconcile them. They almost seemed like conflicting ideas until I moved into project management and project leadership. And especially when I became a mom and when I began to serve in my church and in my community, I began to lean in to my passion for people and the gift of being able to comfort a stranger, or being able to love on I won't call them the unlovable, although we know we love that term, helps us differentiate people who have a challenged exterior, right? So just being able to love everyone. And it was really figuring out how to, from a professional standpoint, balance those two. And as you may recall, when I first started my journey as a professional speaker, coming from the consulting space where my value was my problem solving, my ability to describe and define a project effectively and to launch and implement and all of those other good words, but with my love of people that was growing and growing and growing and being fed by my 4 beautiful children, by when their friends would come over. Before I had kids, I had cousins. So just loving on people just became so much more important. And then when I had the opportunity to go to the continent, you and I were talking about that earlier, it was a very, very, and just really catalyzed the changes in my life of balancing those two more and not treating them as conflicting ideas, but in marrying them. And so from then on, I began to marry the benefit and the value of balancing your EQ and your IQ, and loving and leading while also problem solving, having a critical eye and a compassionate spirit is what came out of that season for me.
Yeah, I love that. As they, especially that we both serve in kind of a similar type of client space, and the people that we work with are accounting firms, engineering, IT, technology based organizations is just one of the silos we walk down. But I love that watching light bulbs go off where like in accounting, person is recruited from Texas A&M University in their accounting school, and they're brought into an organization. All right. And when they're hired because of their grade point average, they're hired because of their ability to learn whatever. But what's wild is watching when they hit that 3 to 4 year mark and they're not just ticking and tying numbers anymore, but it's their ability now to oversee others, and their value in the organization starts climbing based upon their ability to interact, impact the work of others, the work product of others. And the more that they can create an environment where the teams are engaged, what's going on, I call it connecting heart to heart, the value goes up. And that's the essential skills as you're labeling them. I love this is because that's about the person, isn't it? That's about the person. And I think that's one of the gifts that COVID's given us, is this reset that's been going on. And the community, the work community, is stopping and looking at this really hard right now, as to what do we do to help our people feel a sense of connection. Because I think you've seen projects that struggle because people are complying with what's going on, but they're not committed to the process or the outcome. Yeah. And do you advise your clients to take steps or to push commitment up and move people back past compliance?
Oh, yes. It's an expression I use all the time. And one of the ways that I equate it to, especially for my energy industry clients that have such a safety culture, and, so much of their safety culture started with compliance. OSHA came in, we had these regulations. And this also comes from my own personal background and experience of starting at the well side and seeing the importance of safety regulations. You don't get behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler after you've driven so many hours because of regulations. And so you have a compliance to these rules. You have a compliance to these. But what has to happen in order for that to be effective is that you have to have commitment. You have to say, you know what? I've logged this many hours. I'm tired. I'm committed to the fact that we have these guardrails in place. And so moving people to the point where they look at rules and regulations as guardrails. No one looks at a guardrail with it when there's a cliff and begrudges it. They're like, "Whew, thank you. There's a guardrail. Thank you. I'm not going to go in the ditch." And so we want to be committed to what these norms are that we establish and create around culture, and how they help us move things forward. Because loving people is not enough. And that was part of my journey, is loving people is not enough. It's the love and the passion behind people that committed me to continuing to grow and learn how to work with and lead them effectively. And, that's where our passion becomes an enabler.
Yeah. So you're talking about the passion somebody has for the pursuit of what is right as opposed to what is easy.
Yeah.
That's where things break down then. So I've loved our time together, and of course it blew by as fast as I thought that it would. We could have spent like the day spending time talking about this from different angles, but let me just what when it comes to leading projects, and that's kind of what I've been framing our conversation around. Any other just quick tips for somebody who might be going into some type of a project season, whether it be starting one, correcting one, maybe something is not working the way that they need to. Anything that are sort of check boxes that would help them either build a project plan more effectively or straighten one out that's going awry?
The advice that I give all of my clients is to start with people, because projects, it could be a technology adoption, it could be a whole new product line. So a project is going to create a thing, right? So I was thinking of this thing, but ultimately project is going to impact people. So you have to start with that human-centered design of how is this going to impact people? What are the human impact characteristics that I need to account for? Because when we look at project success and project failure, it has much more to do with how it gets adopted, the ease of use, the true benefit. I wrote an article one time about unnecessary change, right? Is this change really needed in this world that is constantly changing? Is stopping what you're doing and adopting this new program or process, is it really beneficial, or did it seem like a good idea? So really, really giving enough analysis at project initiation, because you want to set the project up for success by ensuring that it truly is beneficial, that people who are going to be impacted are part of the conversation, and that many of their needs are taken into account.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it this way, but it's what you're describing is that when you're putting a project in place, the people part of it, I love what you're saying, how the project itself, who is it going to impact? Not who's working on the project plan,
Mm-hmm.
but who is going to be impacted by this and why? And literally go back in and I think, what is the term? I think you referred to as reverse engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Go there and reverse engineer backwards from that point, as opposed to like, here's a project, let's roll it out. Which those of us who are very do driven, let's do this, let's make something happen.
Let's
I
do
love
this and
this
then
thing.
tell people about it. And then,
That's right.
and then go against the grain of what could happen. And that's one of the big things that I differentiate myself as a project and change management expert, is making sure that we incorporate the change management element as part of the project plan, not that tail end of the project. We've created it. Now we're going to roll it out. No, that needs to start much earlier and be integrated into our iterations and how we actually arrive at success.
You bet. And that's my project. I've learned to hate this term of a rollout a project, because and when we think of it that way, we think of that carpet rolling out.
Yeah.
And the problem you have with it is that you have to look at, is it the right length, is it the right color, what's going to happen to what's taking place, as opposed to the end result of it coming back in the other direction. So
no one wants a great reveal. I mean, only on what was the show where they would do a makeover in the house and you get this great reveal? Like,
yeah, there's a couple of them.
Don't do that for a project. Don't do that.
No, and the reason why is because of this topic we're talking about, right? There's no commitment that comes out of the person who's getting it, because they don't. It's what do we say? If people don't have the opportunity to weigh in, you're never going to get buy-in. According to Patrick
now you're just adding to resistance, and the emotions have changed. For a lot of people, change feels like loss. If you do this great reveal of this great new system, oh my goodness, now they have to process letting go of the old one, which no matter how they've gotten comfortable with. So you don't ta-da people.
No, and especially the work that you and I do in the world of everything disc. There are certain some people are wired to be change resistant, not because they are risk avoidant. It's just how they process life. And what happens if we don't factor that in to who's going to be resisting to this? And it's not for territorial purposes, it's protectionist, because they don't want to fail. They can't see, they need more clarity, and be able to work it from that perspective. Then what happens is, there's no project plan you can roll out, and you can't do what you've become a master at, which is helping companies really drive change. And what we've learned, Alana, is that change is not optional. It's just not. If we stay with our head stuck in the ground, saying this is the way life is, we know that according to some research I was doing this morning before this, is that the entire data information that's been obtained, 90% of it's been obtained in the last 2 years. Right. That number's grown drastically from the 70% that I heard in 2 years, less than 5 years ago. The speed, and it's not the speed of change, the speed of data movement in the world. And that's the area that we have to be better shepherds of helping our people deal with, as we're trying to be able to drive things forward. So thank you so much for your time and your sharing your intellect and your heart with us today. And what's the best way if somebody wants to reach out to you and continue conversations with you? How do they get in contact with you?
The easiest way to go is to find me on my website. Well, find me on LinkedIn, because I'm always on LinkedIn. That's great conversations. You can also find me online at Alana Leads Change. That's Alana without the T's, leadschange.com.
Super. Great. Well, thank you so much. And best to you as you continue to go and shape the world. Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility, it's an honor.